Hello and welcome to the Dungeon Masters Guild House. This is a weekly podcast. I believe this is episode 29, where I sit down with, creators on the DMsGuild and surrounding space and chat about amazing things. I am privileged as always to be joined by Linder. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to be here.
Yeah, nice. How are you doing?
Yeah, doing good. Keeping busy in lockdown, of course.
Yeah.
Perfectly timed. Got my first haircut in months.
Whoa.
Just for you.
You weren't thinking of the again. I think that's the funny thing about the podcast is you can see it where I shave my own head in quarantine, so you can, if week by week, you can see my hair growing back. So this is like literally like day 2 of like lockdown. I shaved my head, and now this is where I am now. But no, I think thank you for making the effort. No.
Yeah, I figured it's best not to look like an absolute wild man with the hair down the leg.
Was it that bad before?
Oh yeah. I was at the point where I was tying it back in a ponytail, basically.
Nice. So before we turn into a hairdressing podcast, Kai, what sort of people might what would the listeners maybe know you for, or what sort of products do you kind of work on the DMsGuild?
Yeah, I think the main thing people would know me for is Goblin Heist, probably. That is my only solo title to date. I have mostly worked on collabs because I both write and edit. So a lot of my work is editing, and people don't tend to know people for their editing in general unless they're within the community. But I think other than that, I also wrote for Unbridled, which you wrote for as well, I believe.
Yep.
So I had my horribly chaotic astral laser cooking battle adventure in that one. And I also worked on Realigned, which was several new systems for looking at in alignment in different ways and trying to make it more interactive and integrated in the system. So I think those are the main things people would know me for. Mostly Goblin Heist, though.
No, fair, actually, was it? So I've kind of, as always, I do my research. So I might have a few questions. But let's top of the order. First and foremost, congratulations on Goblin Heist being a staff pick for Wizard. Yeah. I mean, I didn't even know the DMsGuild could get staff picks. It was it like one of the first few?
Yeah, they had Monsters of the Old World was the only staff pick for about a year, I think. And then they just suddenly brought it back, and I don't think I even got an email about it necessarily. I just got a notification once saying, hey, you're a staff pick, and went to look at it and be like, yes, now I'm currently one of, I think at the time, one of 6, and they've been doing more and more batches of 5, which is great because it means you can now click that and get
it's not just, you can get this one product and stuff like that.
Yeah, super excited to have that. It's wonderful having that license staff pick with a little blurb on the sale page there.
I was going to say, and the cover for it is beautiful. It's so charming. Was it? Like, I'm gonna try and do my best, sort of like for the audio listeners. So it's 3 goblins cowering under like a window, and the man is ginger beard, very grumpy as he holds like sort of like candlelight and like a sleeping cap.
Yeah, he's definitely heard something out there, and they're trying not to be spotted. You can definitely see one of their ears is sticking out of the windowsill there, so not doing the best job on their stealth check there.
So what was the kind of the inspiration behind it then? Because I believe if I remember correctly, so this is something where you actually provide like pre-generated characters, like goblins, essentially.
Yeah. So I wrote that one during the RPG Writer Workshop.
Oh, interesting.
So I signed on to that. Completely forgot I signed on to it, and then realized about 3 weeks before the end that this is going on. I need to hit this deadline. The inspiration for that one was my girlfriend, basically, in that one of her absolute favorite things to do is steal all of the blankets from me and be really greedy and hog them all.
Yep.
And she loves goblins, loves gobbos, just loves them. And I do too, so it fit very well, and just thought I'd take inspiration from her and make something where you get to play as goblins and just get as cozy as you possibly can, and it kind of all just built up around that into, all right, we need to set it in winter then. All right, if you're goblins, who's against you? And floated outwards from there and worked out really nicely, yeah.
No, I was gonna say it's definitely like a cute. It's like kind of like not maybe cute, like a wholesome experience. Like goblins typically don't get in both D&D 5.
Yeah, I mean until you have players actually play it and they murder sleeping villagers.
Actually, I was going
I was
to
actually. It hadn't really occurred to me when I put it out, and a bunch of people like came back to me and said, "Oh, I played this with my kids or with my family, and they loved it." And I hadn't realized that it would actually be really good for families. So ever since, it's been like,
no, I guess I'm curious. So what sort of like again, how much sort of like playtesting feedback have you kind of got, or just not playtesting, but like people who've gone out and sort of played it? What are they sort of saying about it?
So I've got a couple people. There's one person who it seems to be one of their favorite things to run, and most of the time they run it, they either directly message me and say I ran it and it went great, or they'll tweet about it and tag me in it so I can always see it. And they seem to just have a fantastic time with it. I've gotten some nice feedback from them as well, in that one of the adventure has several components that you can just choose whether you want to use them or not.
Mm-hmm.
So it's supposed to be highly replayable in that there's 3 weather conditions: clear weather, snowing, or blizzard, to make the games more intense. There's 4 different adventures that can be hunting you, and some of them are more difficult than others. Dealing with a fighter who just kicks indoors and tries to find you is slightly easier than the wizard who has alarm spells around the whole village.
Okay, yeah.
But I found that most of the people haven't really seemed to use the weather effects too much. They found it a bit much.
Mm-hmm.
So the main feedback I've got from it is people going, I just set it at night, or I just set it in the snow, and I don't worry about all the other special weather effects for this, because yeah, it's fine. Whatever works for people, and I think that's a consistent one, a good one to add to ratchet up the difficulty if you play it multiple times.
No, interesting. And then I must, so I've never written anything that has pre-generated characters, but I guess I kind of spoke to when I spoke to Anthony about his his Blood Hunter. The one-on-one sort of thing. At least when you're designing for like a class, you have a fair bit of, I guess it's a restriction, because but it's more like you know what that class can do, and you know their strengths and weaknesses, and you sort of. I'm curious about like how did having like pre-generated characters like inspired? Like, did you start off with pre-generated characters? Did you create them at the end? Like,
the idea was always to have pre-generated characters. At one time, I did sit down and spend way too much time making tables of how to make sure it's perfectly balanced, where every goblin has one thing they're great at, one thing they're terrible at, one thing they're okay at, one thing they're bad at, and balance it all out. So it wasn't the standard as well of the strong goblin is stupid. That's not the case in this. The strong, like I don't remember off the top of my head anymore, but like the really perceptive one has almost no constitution and will die in one hit if they ever fail. The plan was always to have pre-gens, because it kind of has its own mechanical system to how Goblin Heist works. So there's just kind of a lot of different pieces, and doing that let me give the players things that would let them interact with those systems more than creating their own character would.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually fit the style of what's going on a bit better than the average character. I didn't really particularly design too much around the pre-gens. I kind of didn't need to.
Mm-hmm.
Partly that's because I did actually go back and design the pre-gens once the adventure was done, because I didn't know yet exactly how my mechanics were going to work. For example, there's random chances that you find what you're looking for, or that determine what you run into, and some of them will have things like you deal extra damage if the person you're attacking has food that you want. So I didn't know if food was going to come into play or anything like that. So they kind of they were the last thing I designed.
But I guess but you had the idea of including them from the very start.
Yeah, so I always knew I was going to do them. I had the names very early for all of the goblins. It's just the actual specific mechanics came much later, which gave me time to like make sure they were kind of balanced.
And then to kind of talk about like it was your history of DM. Was Goblin Heist your first product on the DMsGuild, or did you have something?
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
That was the first thing I put out. I think it was December 18th or 19th. So not that long ago, and that's been my bestseller as well since then.
It's like that. No, it's I guess as well. So with the sort of like I do like modular design. It is kind of like tidy, and especially when it comes to like writing multiple products, they are the sort of systems that are very easy to sort of like say, oh, well, I mean, this is another snowy place. I can just literally just and you mentioned as well, so obviously you had like weather conditions. What was like? I guess I'm wondering like why go super modular? Was it just the fact that you kind of wanted it to be super replayable, or was it just like is that something about like your particular play style or like DM style?
A bit of both. I like modular systems a lot. I'm someone who actually doesn't use, I don't really use a huge number of DMsGuild products myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because a lot of the time I'm very conscious of what does and doesn't add to the experience. Because one of the great things about 5th edition is it's so lightweight. And usually I find that players don't care that much about granularity of design, about how specific things get. Most players don't want to track equipment weight and arrow numbers and things like that. So I tried to make sure that if you didn't like something, it was relatively easy to remove it, while also balancing that with it actually mattering that it was there. Part of it really was just me designing it and going, "Ooh, I've had another idea. I have to put this in." And at some point I had to be like, no more new systems. I need to stop this. So it worked out as a good balance where people can very easily remove what they're not interested in. And I did consistently throughout, like from the beginning, have an eye on replayability. Because as I said, it's something like, if you look at just the weather system, that's 3 different kinds of weather that change how things go. It's more dangerous to be outside when it's a blizzard, but you're also better at stealth. There's 4 different adventurers to choose from that change how the whole game plays, because the rogue adventurer hides traps in the locks, so now you have to be careful about lock picking and try windows more instead. And then there's the choice of which of the 6 goblins you play as. So basically I added multiple systems for ensuring that even if you chose the same weather conditions or the same adventure, it would still be a different game and it would still roll out differently.
I guess, I was saying, 6 goblins is a bit of a weird number. I guess is 6 like the average play size of like, or was it just?
It was because there are 6 ability scores.
Oh, and then okay.
So so each goblin is really good, meaning I haven't looked at them in a little while now. It has, I think, a +2 to one ability score and a -2 to another one.
Nice.
So they're all very good at one thing and very bad at one thing. So I just balanced the numbers that way.
That kind
we want a sneaky one, we want a strong one, we want a smart one, kind of thing.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. No, fair. And actually, funny enough, so it kind of leads into my next question, talking about like how like lightweight the sort of the 5e system is. Obviously, you worked on Realigned. I'm curious, like, so what was your input for that sort of product and sort of redesigning the like alignment system?
Yeah, so there were 3 systems in there, and the one I worked on was the oh my goodness, I worked on an axis looking at where your character is focused, like where they kind of orient their attention on others, whether they think primarily about themselves when addressing the world and questions, or whether they think about other people. So kind of similar to being selfish or selfless. But I wanted it to be a spectrum that you could move back and forth on, and it wasn't right or wrong to be on one or the other. Because obviously if you say, haha, you're a very selfish character, people go, okay, you're a bad character.
Yeah.
So got to work on that with Adam, Sadie Lowry, and Ryan Langer. And Ryan was originally the one who ran the product and who ran the project. And he kind of brought a few ideas and said, here's some systems I have ideas for. What do you think about these kind of lists of bullet points? What would you do with this if you had an opportunity to? Which system do you like? And I said I wanted to work on that kind of idea of having something that, an axis that varies back and forth.
Yeah.
So basically Ryan posed the initial idea and then he just gave it to me to take it and run with.
Yeah.
And I did definitely run with it.
Oh boy, I did some running.
It was a great process of bouncing it back and forth off of all 3 of those people who are all obviously amazing creators as well.
Yeah.
So we got to have lots of input back and forth. That was a good fun one to write as well. And I think your question was about lightweight systems. So again, in that one, sometimes I'm not sure how conscious or unconscious again these things are, but that one is also actually very modular. It's very easy to take a bit you don't like out of it.
Yeah.
It's meant to be relatively lightweight, but you're also meant to pay attention to it consistently throughout the game, because if you're playing a character and they do something that very much demonstrates that you're only thinking about yourself, or that you have an eye on your own goals, it's something you can reward. The system is meant to be dynamic because alignment is not, and the goal was to get away from that.
So I guess I'm curious. So what sort of like, if you'd like to sort of like, I guess give like a little spoiler or something, but what are kind of like the systems kind of at play there? So like, what you said mentioned I could be rewarded if, you know, slowly taking more sort of putting myself forward at events in character. What would the sort of the system at play sort of respond to that?
So part of it was initially kind of placing yourself on this spectrum that goes from 5 down to 0 and then back up to 5. So with an other focus on one side and a self focus on the other. Whatever rating you're on, you would get a small bonus from that, and you would get a specific, almost like a small feat or background feature, and it kind of varies throughout. So some of them are very mechanical benefits. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head what it was.
No, it's like, was it? This is going back like a few months, I think.
Yeah, but it's been a while since I looked at that actually. Let me grab that draft real quick, then I can give you some better answers.
I think again, it's one of the things I'm kind of asking because it is like it's a really interesting product, and seeing how like again a collaboration like that, and the authors involved kind of came at it from different perspectives is interesting, and especially it's kind of nice to hear that it was such like a collaborative experience and not sort of like everyone taking these individual parts of the realignment system and running.
Yeah. All right, so I pulled it up to refresh myself real quick, and I basically assigned 4 different benefits to having a particular rating. Each rating will give you one effect. So, for example, if you're perfectly in the middle, so you're perfectly balanced between others and yourself, the special effect you get is that people are likely to recognize you as being a fair and reasonable person. So you're always assumed to be operating in good faith when arbitrating or negotiating. Because that's a fairly even tone thing. That kind of operates like background features do, where it's a very, very soft approach. The DM gets to adjudicate that. It may or may not come up. Whereas others, for example, if you have an other rating of 3, which is halfway along the scale, you can just straight up use the help action as a bonus action.
Nice.
Other ones, you get long rest abilities, or you become better at reading other people. You also get new ways to gain inspiration, because I'm someone who forgets about inspiration a lot.
Yeah. And
I like giving my players ways to gain it where they also feel okay to say, Kai, I did this thing. Can you give me inspiration? And I can say, oh yeah, good. Thank you for reminding me. So they can kind of ask it without having to beg for it or feel bad. But an example, I think, for the self side, you gain inspiration when you find a way to improve your own well-being by working with the party.
Oh, nice.
Because one thing I was very mindful of this as well is when designing for something to be about yourself, D&D is a cooperative game. I didn't want to encourage people to ignore the party. So it was about finding a way to get what you want by still playing the game and being with everyone else.
Yeah. I suppose it like, depending on what scale you can look at it, like the idea of like self could be self as a party compared to like, you know, others as the whole world.
Yeah, I mean, a big component of it is I'm a psychology person. I have a master's in psychological research. That's what I'm really interested in. So I kind of approached this from a somewhat psychological angle, where I looked a lot at I'm not sure if you've heard of locus of controls before, which is where you assign meaning to different things based on whether it's someone else or yourself, and interpreting things that way. I also kind of put in elements of introversion versus extroversion in there to make it so that being about yourself or others isn't strictly selfishness and selflessness, because we've seen that a million times, and that's kind of how the 5e alignment axis works. So I tried to broaden the spectrum and give it a little bit more depth than just I steal a lot and he donates his money to everyone.
No, in fairness, it's here. No, so I've got a friend who, it's funny enough, is also a psychologist, or like, you know, works in that area. and he had us all sort of do the locus of control tests. And there's an ongoing joke where I scored very low in the idea that, or the fact that like I'm very much at the whims of fate. so I don't know what it is about. Like I just like my concept of the control I have in my life is very low, and I just go with the flow.
Things just happen to you when you drift along in the stream.
Yeah, I just I let the dice roll where they may. No, that's fascinating. I love hearing about when people kind of bring in their like I don't know their specialities, their jobs, their interests. I think speaking with Cam was like one of his like was it the wood based or like not carpentry lumberjack inspired thing they did is based entirely on his parents or his family who have like a history. So I think like it's nice and any excuse to put that masters to use as well.
I get to put it to use. I mean, I forget where I heard it, but I remember some writer saying something about everyone is a geek about something. Put that kind of geeky passion that you have into your product, and even if not everyone else is a geek about that, they'll kind of sense that love and think that thing is cooler too. So like Tolkien was obviously a massive linguistics geek. That's why he did that, because he was a linguistics geek. He didn't do it because this is what fantasy must have. It's because it's what he loved, and kind of taking something like psychology or your parents working in being lumberjacks or working in carpentry and putting that love in there. People can feel that, and it makes it a lot nicer that way.
Oh, nice. Look at that. We came here with like a little wholesome message there.
Sorry.
No, that's awesome. And I was also going to ask, you also like looking at your repertoire. You were also involved in the scientific secrets. Was that a editing part or was that a
writing?
Right.
Yeah, so I've written I think two creatures for each of those that has come out. I think I missed the first one, but I've been on all of the other ones. So I keep going back and being like Zeke Gonzalez is the one who runs that.
Yeah.
Like Zeke, you can't get rid of me. I'm here to write more things for you. You can't keep me away.
I'm fascinated by that sort of project because again, it's the idea of like that. It kind of embodies the idea of like a particular geekiness. The idea of like I think isn't Zeke himself? Isn't he a not biologist but close?
I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I cannot remember at the moment, but yeah, he is definitely a scientist, an entomologist or something like that. I forget.
This is I'll bring him on.
If you're listening, Zeke, I'm sorry.
But no, yeah. So it was. So again, so that it's kind of like an interesting project to sort of be involved in. I'm curious about how exactly like did they come up with new creatures? For example, like Salt Marsh, it kind of makes sense because you just look at things better. But was it for the Avernus? How do you take like devils and just make them
scientific papers about real hell beasts and wrote up those
the abundance of them.
So the conceit of all those is basically it's not you have to be 100% grounded in reality. It's that the creatures that we make for each of these have to at least have some trait or function that is based on a real existing creature. They're always supplied, I'm not sure if you've noticed, with a scientific reference. So they all have a journal citation you can go look at to see like, yes, see, this is the animal it's based on, and it can shoot blood from its eyes, or it can do this ridiculous thing. So it's taking that, finding what art we can to best fit that, or if it's something completely out there. Zeke has been doing a great job of finding art, bringing in artists for more recent ones to kind of take care of the more out there stuff. Yeah, it's basically a process of finding an animal in real life that you think is cool or does a cool thing, especially if it's fitting for the terrain, and then like, turning that into a D&D monster, turning everything up to 11.
The idea of mentioning shooting blood at your eyes, I'm like, yeah, you know what, that does fit into Avernus. Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many creatures that fit that. So for scientific secrets of Salt Marsh, which was all aquatic creatures, one of the ones I looked at was a bottom-dwelling fish called a stargazer, which is obviously a pretty cool name.
Yeah,
and they hang out on the bottom of the ocean, and they can shoot electricity from glands in their eyes.
What the fuck?
And I was like, I have to use that. That's really cool. Yeah. So grabbed that, and from there just constructed a creature around, okay, what are the key points of this? the name Stargazer, I got to keep that. That's really cool. So it's going to lay on the bottom and look up at the sky. How do I work that into the lore? Ended up building it as a kind of undead ghost thing, like the shade of people who have died drowning, but don't realize they're drowned and are eternally trapped in that body of water trying to escape. So it's a shadow that sits at the bottom of ponds or even wells. And anyone who comes near, they try and grab them and pull themselves out, but they can't. So they only pull the person in, and they freak out and they electrically stun people in their attempt to get out. So they're kind of the name in that case becomes Stargazers because they're eternally trapped at the bottom, staring up at the night sky. They can never actually go near again. That's turned a bit more dark and depressing.
That's pretty dark, but that's metal. That metal as hell. That's awesome.
He also had his outrageous owlbears was another similar one which he did recently, and I designed 2 kind of variant owlbears for that, and those were all mashups of existing creatures.
Yeah, because the concept is that it's not a bunch of owlbears. It's like things like 2 animals, like an owl and a bear merged.
Yeah. I think originally Zeke was referring to them all as avi ursines or something like that. Avian ursine. Which was good fun. So we got some really great, some really interesting combinations in there with some absolutely fantastic art.
So was that the premise? You had to go with bird first, then, or was it?
No, there was no particular setup. He's pretty freeform with a citation, a real animal. It has to be clearly inspired by that. Smash it up how you want it.
Fair. I'm finding this is going to go back to the idea of geeking out about stuff, or just generally it's like inspiration for D&D products is literally anywhere. Like there's literally no end to it, and I think that's pretty good. That's another good takeaway. God damn.
I mean, you get to the point where if you start working on this kind of stuff enough, or it's in the back of your head enough, especially once you start putting things down to paper or to Word doc, I guess. You start kind of seeing inspiration everywhere. I'm sure you write stuff too. You've probably had that where you're sitting on the bus and you just randomly see something and go, "Ooh, yeah, that's a good idea. I'm going to make that a magic item or something."
I think do you have like a text file on your phone or equivalent full of just either 2 a.m. ideas or just the
Yeah, I tend to do my best thinking on public transport.
Yeah, I mean, you've got nothing else to do. It's like you.
So that's when I just jot things down, and I'll have a note file that's just like pages long, and I'll forget everything that's on there. I do have a Google Doc as well, where I try and put things in there every now and then. But
I think the problem is like the rate I have ideas is never gonna match the rate I finish them or create things. So it's always the case of you try and think of I should start a new project, and you think of something. I'll just do this quickly, and then you forget that there's notes that have been around in that little document for I don't know, months, maybe even years, and you're just one day, I am going to do that one. It's just
I think was it 3 or 4 months ago? I think I'd had my iPhone for a good 5 years, and it finally died on me, and I just couldn't charge it again. And I realized, oh no, I had thousands of words of notes on for D&D ideas, and I don't think I ever got them back. So I was like, I don't know what terrible ideas are lost to time now. Thankfully, save it to the cloud. That's what I've said. At least with the notes, I think that's the only thing I really save to the cloud. It's just in the event of losing my phone, at least I have. Oh, goblin cannon. Yeah, I'm glad I still have that one. Yeah.
I think
when's the goblin cannon product coming?
No. Here's the thing. I think I use anytime I've spoken about that list, I do mention goblin cannon because I think more likely it's going to be a giant who's nicknamed the goblin cannon, who just has a bag of goblins that he reaches into and just hurls it.
That sounds pretty perfect.
Yeah, it does. I just need a place for him, or just need a place to throw this.
For your, what was it, Goblin Bosses? For the Goblin Bosses Volume 2?
Yeah, it should. Yeah, well, yeah. You know what? Yeah, here's the thing. I guess it would not be a goblin boss because, it's that weird middle grey area because they are using goblins, but the goblins probably aren't a fan. No.
You see, you just got to put one more goblin on top of the giant or ogre, and
The-
he's the boss.
Yeah,
Running.
like a ratatouille thing.
Exactly. Yeah. See, I've been in my own home game. I've been running Tomb of Annihilation lately, so I've been having so much fun with the goblin battle stacks in
Nice,
there, where you just stack goblins on top of each other. So stacking goblins is fresh in mind.
Yeah. No, funny. I've actually also written about stacking goblins recently. I was writing a bunch of like random encounters, and one of them was I didn't want to make it automatically like violent. So I was like, okay, you come across, I don't know, like 6 goblins. There's 2 teams, both sort of stacked up, and they're having almost like shoving competitions that they get the party involved in. And if the party can shove down the stack of goblins, or just I think it was it. That's the I like small things like that, where you just sort of take like an encounter that most parties would have had, I don't know, 300 times over, and just give them like a little bit of spice.
Add some life to things.
Yeah. I was gonna say, so kind of I think that's like the longest sort of introductory or like segment I think I've had, which is great. But I'm gonna segue into like the sort of core like professional questions about your sort of creative process as a whole.
All right.
I'm curious then. So what is your creative process? Like where do you get your ideas from? Like we were talking about your Words document, but I mean, when you're not thinking on a bus, like what are you thinking about?
I have I would say I have a fairly chaotic and unrefined creative process, because I've not been at this that long. Most of the stuff I've done has been working to deadlines, and that's a great way to force you to have your creative process go through. But I think most of the time it's that I have ideas, I jot them down, and I kind of churn them over passively in the back of my mind. And at some point when I realize, hey, I have time and I have like the urge to write something, I'll scroll through my document of the slightly better ideas, the slightly less nonsense ideas, and see what kind of pings off in my mind. And I feel like, ooh, that's what I feel like writing right now. It's like I'm in the mood to write some magic items.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll kind of just grab that and start developing it. Because I also do a lot of work as an editor, I'm pretty good at writing the mechanics just straight up. I don't need to kind of jot them down and then fix them later. I can quite easily churn out the words once I have the ideas for what I want. So usually my process is put something down in the doc, take care of whatever other projects I'm working on. When something comes up, I'll grab that. I will ignore it for a few months while telling myself I really, really need to write something.
Yep.
And then eventually at some point come back and start like absolutely churning through what's there, and then get really stuck and overly focused on one tiny mechanic about, should this be 25 feet or 30 feet? And then I'll think about that for a week, and then I'll finish it.
No, ultimately, no. In fact, yeah, I think that kind of mimics everyone. And I imagine it's interesting. I imagine it's easier to get involved in more projects as an editor sometimes, just because obviously, again, the motto of this podcast is, I'm not even joking, it is hire an editor. Just because it's lesson number one. They make things a lot better. And I'm sure as an editor, there's no sort of there's no nepotism or anything where you go, oh yeah, no, you should hire an editor at least.
You should absolutely hire an editor. Talk to editors. They are also people too, even though they will say mean things about your products and tell you you're wrong.
I guess my question is, so how did you get into being an editor? Like, what was the first sort of project that you got involved in?
Well, basically, I've always been pretty good at writing and English. I've always written to a pretty good standard, like in school and stuff. I never had problems with that. So I grew up in Hong Kong mostly. And one of the things I would do as a summer job was teach English. So I did a lot of tutoring, and mostly that was primary students, so it wasn't really written. But the other thing that I did for a while was editing non-native English speakers' dissertations and university applications.
Okay.
Because I could make it sound more natural. And I got used to that, and I have a very critical eye. I'm very good at noticing those kind of things and being like, I can't believe you wrote this. You did this wrong. I times there.
I can't imagine you being the screaming editor. Like I think it was in the few. Actually, was it? I think we have. Is it? Was it Heroes and Villains? I don't know.
Yes, yeah. So heroes, villains, and artifacts.
Artifacts as well, yeah. As
Yeah,
I
I
say,
think I've
yeah.
edited you in both of those.
Nice, yeah. Yeah, so you went that yelly. There was no caps lock.
Because I have to tone it down, Matt. I'm sitting here going, I've seen what Matt's done. Matt, you could do a better King Arthur than this. You could do a better Excalibur than this. Matt,
I like the idea that
Excalibur cooler.
there's the first draft, which is just like, and then you edit yourself, which is you take out all the expletives and
pretty much, yeah.
Just tone adjustment.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I have a good eye for it. I did that a couple times. As a random one-off job, I don't even remember how it happened, but I got commissioned to edit a novel for publication in Hong Kong. So I edited the novel, and then I came to this and was like, I'm pretty good at editing. I think the first involvement I had with the DMs Guild was basically just doing some random, really haphazard editing for Oliver Clegg.
Oh, really?
Because he was the DM for my home games, basically. Like I learned to play. We basically learned to play D&D together. Mm-hmm. Like he's the DM who introduced me to D&D in London.
Yeah.
So we've been playing D&D for 3 years now, I think, together. And when he first started looking at things, he would just send them over and be like, Kai, can you tell me if there's anything wrong with this? I'd be like, yeah, this is this. Send it back to him and he'd publish. But the man churns out too much content at too insane a rate for any editor to remain sane and keep up.
I was going to say, if he doesn't have like in the idea of like when someone enters a boardroom with their fleet of lawyers, I imagine all of it's like that with editors.
He's got a boardroom full of editors that are barely holding themselves together, and he just like throws a draft in there, and they all scrabble to the corners to get away from it, so they don't have to be the one.
I had no idea. It's such a small. I had no idea. It was like you came into D&D with Oliver. That's.
Yeah. So basically, initially, it was just doing some random haphazard editing for him and being like, oh, actually, I could do this. I've talked about D&D so much, and that first group that group that we played together with, everyone was really intensely into D&D, mm-hmm. and we would have like nonstop negotiations about game mechanics and everything. So within a few months, it was kind of a trial by fire almost, and within a few months, I already understood the mechanics really well and how everything goes together. So I got good at that pretty quickly and was like, well, obviously, I think I can do this, and I started doing it, and it's been going well. So
no,
I just keep doing it, and no one has been like, you're too mean, no editing for you yet. So
yeah, no, I was gonna say I think was it the thing. I think was it so having your work edited. I think sometimes it's like the editors I've noticed that sometimes do this is a nice sentence occasionally. Like obviously they can't do that for everything. That's like anything that isn't covered in red line, is kind of all right. But yeah, sometimes it's just a little thing to be like, oh yeah, no, good job. Just a little like, what is it? Every now you need the carrot before you get the stick.
Yeah, I do. I probably should practice my like compliment sandwiching. This is good. This is bad. This is good. Kind of thing. But personally, I'm a critical person. I'm not a positive person in that I'm not so good at giving, I guess, positive feedback. Yeah. I constantly second guess myself and worry that I sound disingenuous because I'm not used to doing that.
Yeah.
So I always worry that if I comment on something like "this is great," it sounds like I'm being mocking or something. So I'm like, never mind, I just won't say anything.
Well, I guess it's a case of like if you were the editor and you highlighted the sentence saying "this is great" and made no changes to it, and your job is to edit it. Maybe it's the case of like, what is this mind game that Kai's playing? Like, does he think it's good? Like, he didn't edit it, so that makes me. Or is it so laughable that it's like
how paranoid would you be if I returned a magic item to you with just not a single edit throughout, just saying excellent work?
Again, I wouldn't. Yeah, that's a tough one. Like to get something back that has been unedited. Well, I mean, like not touched because it was so good, or like just it was adequate the first time. I don't think. Here's the thing. I know for a fact I can't write perfectly. So it's, in the event that I ever do, that's like that's like monkeys and keep like was it writing Shakespeare?
yeah. Someday, Matt, you'll write the perfect thing.
Yeah, one day. But yeah, so here's the thing. I've just got I've just got to keep churning it out. That's what I'm going for. It's not. I'm going to get quality through quantity.
Yeah. It's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Anyone who says you should try and write to a high standard of quality, don't listen to them. Just write a lot.
Write low, and then just get an editor to polish it.
Yeah.
So moving on slightly then. So I guess like across like either writing or editing, do you have like what is your favorite part? Like what's the kind of thing you enjoy the most?
In terms of writing, I guess I really enjoy that point when you kind of have an idea and you start thinking, I want to do this, and you do open that sheet and you start kind of just free flow letting ideas hit the page without worrying like, is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? How would I balance the mechanics for this? How should I price this product? And kind of thing. I really enjoy that, like just the free flow expression of ideas, regardless of how polished or unpolished they are. And I think it's really enjoyable to get into that creative groove where you're just sitting there kind of not realizing how long it is in a flow state, just going, yeah, this is good, goblin cannons, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's especially with like I find it that for me with like it's more typical with like encounters or items, like small scale stuff. Like it's easier to get lost and churn out like 20, and then you realize, oh, it's 4:00. I should probably have lunch.
Yeah. I guess for editing, sometimes the best part is just realizing that the person who's writing is aware of the 5e style and has done particular things, like gotten their bolding and italics correct, and it's like, that's something I don't have to check. That's nice. One less thing I need to do. That's nice. That saves some time for me.
Is there like a particular order that you go in, like for following the 5e style guide? Do you kind of work top from bottom, or do you kind of like literally just go through like everything at once?
I open the document and I read it and I edit everything at once as I go. Okay. Occasionally I'll get like halfway and be like, oh, this is wrong, and I'll fix it and realize I didn't do that. I didn't actually catch that in the rest of the document. And then I'll go back and fix it. Yeah. I think the only thing I check every time before I start is I just do like a Control F and look for double spaces. And just get rid of those right off the bat.
I was like, for me, before I even hand a document over to another, I've now realized it's my cans and wills. I search for cans and wills, and then I ship it off. And also, I think I've become quite bad at using that. But those are my three like red button words. Do you have like a red button word?
I mean, yeah, you've hit that on the nail. Can and will are very big ones. I tend to look at and try and make sure that things like whether they refer to the characters, adventurers, heroes, party, is standardized quite quickly from the from the get-go.
Oh, fair. Because I must admit, I'm fairly freeform in my use of those, just because like you gotta change it up, or are you like should it be consistent throughout?
I try to keep it consistent, but I'm not too worried as long as it's some specific ones. As long as it's not. I guess a better way to phrase it was I find out where they say the players do this and almost always change that because they're almost never actually referring to the players. So as long as they're saying the party or the adventurers or the characters, I'm not too fussed about that. But I do watch out for the players.
Yeah, I think it's the people at the table shouldn't really be mentioned in the document unless it's like it's a meta thing. Which I do want to write some meta stuff one day. That's a tangent in itself.
To go back around to Goblin Heist, I did actually throw some meta stuff in there where because I wanted to encourage people to act like goblins. Some of them have abilities where you have to say something out loud.
Oh, nice.
To get the effect. I think because there's no healing spells in Goblin Heist, I've written it where everyone basically can regain like 1d4 hit points if they eat food as an action.
Oh, nice. And
I've said that you can make that 2d4 if you mime eating in a disgusting way. So to just encourage everyone to just be sitting there going, kind of thing.
Just a bunch of goblins at your table.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really nice idea. I like the idea of like making D&D a little bit more performative, or just just a little bit more engaging in some cases. Yeah. And then I guess on the other side of the coin, I kind of asked about what your favorite thing was. What was your least favorite? What's your least favorite thing across like editing or like anything?
Marketing.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yes.
I am terrible at social media. I absolutely dread it. I'm someone who is very concerned with whether or not I sound genuine, and I never feel like I do when I tweet things most of the time. Every now and then I'll feel okay with it, but it's just something I've never been good at. I've never enjoyed, and therefore I don't think about it that much.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely the thing I like. I like the least.
I think here's the thing. I think I'm fairly good at the sort of like the build up to a release, like doing all the promo, the week of release, and then I think it gets to like 2 or so weeks after the product. And I'll be honest, I've already taken the product out back. To me, it's gone.
Yeah, once the first week is over, or it's hit that first medal, it's like, okay, cool. I don't need to ever look at this again.
Yeah, and here's the thing, and it's what I do like about the DMsGuild system, or like the drive-through system, is the medal system, because it does allow you to, once you hit those, the slow drip of like one sale like every 2 weeks, will eventually get to a copper, and then you get to do a little bit more promo, and then it gets silver and so on. Which is nice, because sometimes it's nice to go back and think of like, oh, I can't believe I actually wrote this. And then as you're sort of saying, hey, this is now a silver, you're also going, oh, I would change so much about this. Like,
I don't think I've gone back and actually read Goblin Heist, so I don't know if I would look at it and be like, ooh, why has anyone bought this?
I guess it's sort of the case of like there's always things that you're proud of in every sort of product. But I guess it's like you learn as you go. And I guess it's like who I am now as a creator is I don't want to say vastly different. I don't know how much I changed, but I feel different. I feel older. I feel so much older than I was at the beginning.
Yeah, I think that does make sense. You definitely do change and evolve. Some of it will just be getting better at writing or getting better at expressing yourself.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm probably relatively the same now as I was then. So I am very proud of Goblin Heist. I'm pretty sure I would look at it again and be like, yeah, I did good on this one.
Goblin Heist 2 coming this Christmas.
No.
So speaking, so I guess moving away from like advertising and marketing then, and I think we probably like was this in our intro, we had like some good lessons about finding inspiration. But is there any particular lessons you wish you'd learned earlier?
I mean, we've kind of said it already. We've kind of said it, but I think the biggest one I need to still internalize is to actually put content out. As I said, the only solo product I have out is Goblin Heist, so I need to actually put things out myself instead of as part of collabs, which I am working on at the time. But I think that is one of the things, is to just make sure you get something out and not to worry too much about it. I guess a good tie-in from that would be that sometimes the product you think isn't going to sell or no one will care about will be the thing that does well, because you're clearly doing it more for the joy of it.
Yeah.
Kind of putting out your pet project that you think is going to be silly is also something you're going to more enjoy promoting and more enjoy talking about and working on, and it's going to make it so much easier than that thing you have to hit the deadline for and you're kind of bored of and want to be done with now.
Yeah.
So
in fairness,
self-censor a little bit less.
I think with it, I guess like it's different, because like obviously so many projects have a different lifespan, and depending on like what sort of project you're tackling, it can be like it's sometimes hard to see the forest from the trees, and especially when you're not fully out there. I think as well with collaborations is like sometimes it's really good to get involved with them, and I think everyone who comes on and sort of talks about collaborations, they always like talk about how it's a great thing to be involved in. But they are a time sink, and even though you're not handling every part of the project, working to a deadline adds more stress, or just takes up more of your time than you actually intend. So even if it says, oh, I've got 2 weeks to do this, you delay things. And I think having like a personal project on the go is always nice to have something exciting to always sort of come back to and sort of keep chipping away at.
Yeah, for sure. It makes it kind of like a little bit of a refresher. Like, I've been working on this deadline project, but now I can go just like cleanse my palate a bit and write some absolute nonsense.
Yeah. And was it funny enough? Like, this is something that I've personally felt recently, where I agreed for some collaborations where I think in hindsight, had I known the workload, I might not have accepted it. But now that it's kind of done, and like it's I've written everything that I need to write. I've handed it off. I've got that sort of like and now I feel so free. It's like the case of like when you're juggling 7 plates and you suddenly start juggling 2. It's like I've got all these. Like my muscle has been growing extra arms that are now just limp at my side. I need to be juggling them, but sometimes it's nice to have that sort of like lulls in sort of the workflow.
Yeah, absolutely. I go in kind of phases where I just over the course of 2 weeks will sign up for like 5 different collabs and then not touch any collabs for the next couple months, and then sign up for 5 more when they're all done at once.
I was going to ask, because obviously being having, I guess, graduated from the RPG Writer Workshop, have you signed up to it this year?
No, not really.
Yeah,
I think I'm one of those people who's pretty good about figuring out my own writing process and what I'm doing. That I honestly don't think I got as much from it as many other people do. Because I think it is much better for people who kind of lack that confidence. I'm a generally confident person in my writing ability.
Yeah.
So part of it was more that I wanted to kind of give myself that kick to actually do it, as opposed to I don't know how.
Yeah.
So I was able to go through it pretty fast when I was doing it, and it was a great experience. I would absolutely encourage people to do that, and it seems to only be getting better.
Yeah.
Maybe I should go back and do them. They have a marketing course on how to learn how to market your RPGs, and I mean, for someone who hates that, it sounds like a nightmare to do more of it. But if you get better at it, you're going to hate it less, hopefully. So maybe I'll do that at some point.
I think I guess the dream is to eventually, everyone gets to a point where you hire someone and you get a marketing person. Which I think I have heard murmurings how like there are like people who are looking into exploring that space in the DMs Guild, of being like a marketing department for the DMs Guild, which again, I hope it works out. I'm interested to see what that sort of gets, because I guess I think it's weird when it, like, I think was it on Twitter there was kind of mentioning about how the art community particularly says that they're very much like you kind of need like a higher follower turnout to sort of get returns, whereas with the tabletop RPG it feels like you can definitely get by with sub 1,000 followers, or like sub 500, just because it feels like it's a much smaller, kind of more, I guess, close-knit community.
Yeah, definitely more tight knit, I would say, for sure. So it is easier to get by on that kind of stuff. Also, no one expects you to do as big sales, so relatively, if you only sell 50 copies, you're still getting metal and doing pretty well and better than most people. So.
Yeah, so I think that it's setting expectations and stuff like that. But I if you sign up for the market whenever the marketing one rolls around, I'll join you on that one. I think we could. I feel like I could certainly use it. No, awesome. Well, then I guess sort of rounding up our chit chat and then sort of starting to look for the future. Do you have like a particular sort of dream project, like something that you've always wanted to do, but it's kind of sort of sat on the back burner?
I do, and I don't think it will ever happen because it's just got too many parts that are too dangerous, I think.
Too dangerous?
And that I again, going back to being a psychology person, I've always really, really liked the idea of getting a collection of either monsters or encounters or adventures representing different kinds of mental illnesses or disorders. And obviously that's the kind of thing that would have to be a collaboration, because you cannot have someone who doesn't have PTSD write an encounter about PTSD. It needs to come from someone who knows what that's like. Yeah. I would love to do a product like that where people could get some sort of catharsis in trying to represent their experiences and struggles and triumphs with these sort of things. But it's obviously an absolute minefield to be trying to gamify and represent mental illness, mental disorders, neurodiversity. It's very tricky, even if it's written by the people who know what they're doing.
And
because it's not.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I suppose a fair amount of it is obviously, and one individual's experience with particular PTSD is vastly different to one another. So, I definitely do like the concept of like it being for those participating, actively sort of seeing it as a cathartic sort of, I guess, experiment, or just just way to sort of work through. Yeah, no, okay, no, I see what you mean. Yeah, it's like it would be a very sort of interesting project, but I guess it's just trying to navigate that in a way that is.
It's the kind of thing that would also, even if it never saw the light of day, would need to be run almost like a therapeutic group where you need to constantly check on everyone and make sure they're okay. You can't be harsh about timelines on writing something like that.
Yeah.
I would love to see something like that happen, but I just don't think it's a realistic thing to actually get out there.
Yeah. I wonder if I was if I don't know, my gut reaction would be like monetizing something like that.
The initial thought I always had about that is if I'm monetizing it, it's going to charity.
No, 100%.
No one is benefiting off of that personally. Like that's going to charity 100%.
Yeah, no, as I say, yeah, I chances are you've definitely thought of this more than I have.
I've asked her a little bit about it, brought it up with sensitivity readers and gotten ideas on it, but I think every time I kind of get it back in my head that I would love to do this, after about a day or two, I'm like, no, it's not really realistic to be able to bring this.
I wonder if it would be the case of where it's a rather than a singular book, a series, where it's a sort of like almost you act as like a project manager, or you sort of oversee these sort of individual experiences. I don't know. Yeah. No, again, it's a fascinating idea, and it's a case of like, yeah, I can see why that's sort of like a dream project. Who knows? Yeah. Maybe one day.
Yeah, maybe one day.
And then keeping it like within the communities. Then, is there anyone in particular who particularly inspires you in the tabletop RPG space?
So I've mentioned Oliver, and a big reason for that is just because we're close. So I see and hear from him quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
He's mostly an inspiration in just how much work he puts out, and it kind of makes, because we're close at the same time, it makes me feel like my friend is putting out so much stuff, and I'm over here not putting out things. Like, I need to put it out. It's almost like an inspiration / rivalry in some parts where it's like, he's doing well, and I'm not doing as well. I need to use this inspiration to do more.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the biggest one, where every time he releases something, I'm like, why haven't I released more? I need to right now.
I suppose, actually, both. I think, I was about to say, I think a rivalry can be healthy, but I don't know if that's true. Here's the thing, I don't have a rival. I hope I'm no one's rival. I guess that would be a weird thing if you're unknowingly someone's rival. but no, I 100%. There is that case of like when you see, I guess it's particularly with established creators on DMsGuild, there is like a certain amount of I don't know what's the best way to phrase it. It's like but you're seeing their success and automatically sort of comparing it to your own. And
it's a push. It's not always a healthy one. And generally, like I'm mostly joking about this. Like it's a very, very minor percent of that interaction, but it's there, and it's 100% friendly, and I absolutely love the guy and stuff like that. I'm always happy when he's out there throwing really gay things on the guild and such.
Mm-hmm.
It's less about having a rival or a nemesis or it's just having anything to give you a little bit of a push, as long as it's not something that's actively damaging you.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, you use the RPG writer workshop as like the initial push to kind of get you involved. And when I was talking about a rival, I was talking, I guess, more in an abstract sense. I wasn't focusing on yours and Oliver's. Yeah. I don't expect the next time you guys see each other to be, drawing swords.
Well, I guess we can try and see if we can find you a rival or a nemesis on the game.
Yeah. Also, if anyone's listening to this and I'm their rival, let me know. I want to know that I'm someone's right. I could be better. Like I could be sending you guys like slightly snarky comments occasionally, or gloating more openly. I don't know what rivals do. I'm underqualified for this. I'm just sort of thinking, how'd you be a good rival? I don't know. I'm too nice.
Yeah. I'm sure you'll have one someday.
One day. Yeah, you know what? That's a goal. I want to be someone's enemy. I'm like, I've made too many friends in this industry. I think it's about time I make some friends. So, anyways,
Yeah, just gotta pick someone and start dunking on them on Twitter as much as you can.
no, thanks, Kai. You've awoken something deeply evil within me.
You're welcome. This is from one DM to another.
So, looking again in the sort of roundup of looking to the future. Then, anything that you're currently working on that you're kind of happy to sort of share in the chat about?
Yeah. The main thing I'm working on at the moment is there's not enough music in D&D in terms of like mechanics. I cannot make music myself, so I'm not gonna mess with that. But I'm basically initially was working on kind of small, lightweight rules for introducing specific kinds of songs into D&D that players can quickly, easily learn and perform. Mm-hmm. Kind of styling them as like, oh, this song is really well loved by, I don't know, the Black Network or by mercenaries. If you perform this song for mercenaries, they'll trust you more. You get bonuses to persuade or intimidate them. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you play this in a noble hall, you might get thrown out, kind of thing. Having a few like rare songs where if you play this really special song well enough, you can cast a spell with it, kind of things. And I've kind of expanded that out way too big to way too many things. So at the moment, I've pivoted and I'm working on one musical subclass for every class. Oh, nice. That I'm aiming to in the next few weeks, start releasing one every week or every other week. So I've got a few of those that are ready to go. The first one to come out will definitely be a war drummer subclass for barbarians, where you get to carry around an absolutely massive drum that's so big you can barely move it, slam it down on the ground, stay still, and beat out like heavy thundering rhythms on that to affect the battlefield.
Nice. And as I say, did any of the sort of, did you start writing any sort of lyrics for some of the, or is when you moved over to the subclasses you kind of put all those?
Yeah, those songs are kind of on the back burner now. I initially it started because I went and researched what canon songs there were in the Forgotten Realms. So I've actually got a list of canon songs that I'm able to use. Mm-hmm. And some of them do have lyrics. So ideally I would, if I need to, write little lyrics or poem bits as flavor to put with each song so people can get an idea of it.
Oh, nice. But so going back to the idea of a drumming barbarian, that sounds dope.
Yeah,
so is the idea of like they actually kind of like as combat they stay still, or like they kind of
generally, yeah. The idea is you have this big drum, you slam it down, you use your bonus action or whatever, and as long as you stay in range of it, stay in reach of it, you can be hammering this out. That'll speed up your allies. That'll share your rage bonus damage with other people.
Oh, nice! They're like a buff barbarian.
A buffarian. They're already buff, but yeah. So it's like that. And there's little gaps in there for you to like slam a damaging shockwave, or beat a drum, run over, smack someone quickly with a hammer, and then run back and keep beating on the drum for the rest of the turn. The capstone I've got worked out for that is actually just picking up the whole drum and smashing someone with it.
Nice. I don't know why my mind goes to the idea of like, you know how like drummers sometimes go on stage with like 3 sets of drumsticks. It's like an idea of a barbarian who's just there and then just lobbing them drawing more.
Yeah, making ranged attacks with your mallets.
Dude, that'd be so cool. I know my next character.
Yeah, so I've got a bunch, and I've got a few ready to go, like completely mechanically set, and other ones where I'm just sitting here thinking, how am I going to do what I want to do with this?
And I must admit, so to talk about like almost like a small peek at like an economic standpoint, I'll be curious to see how a release every week or every 2 weeks does, because I think there's been like a few sort of products like that who kind of like they do quite fairly well, and then especially I imagine like bundling them all at the end.
Yeah, I had a lot of internal debate, and I kind of asked on the Discord where people talk a lot about it, kind of how best to go about this. Put a lot of thought into whether I wanted to bundle it all in and do the usual, like, here's your release with 12 musical subclasses. But I figured part of it is I need to get stuff out there. I want people to remember that, hey, guys, I'm here, kind of thing. So a bit of it is geared towards self-promotion, of course, a bit. So I figured would be an interesting way to kind of keep myself popping up with new things And then every time I release a new one, I'll throw them into a bundle together where you can then go and get all of them at a reduced price. And that way people can really also pick and choose. If you absolutely have no interest in like an incantation wizard, but you really want the barbarian, just go get the barbarian. You don't have to get everything.
Yeah, I think particularly with subclasses, it's definitely I've seen a lot more sort of products go towards a sort of piecemeal approach, because it's slightly more appealing, I imagine, as a consumer to only get the subclasses you want rather than interesting.
It also proved it gets to be a little bit of a practice in marketing for me as well, if I have to keep constantly doing that every couple of weeks. As you say, ramp up the marketing for a week, put it out, and then forget it exists.
Yeah, and I suppose you have the case of, like, again, when you're advertising the second one, you can throw a link to the first one, and then it's just Wow, okay, yeah. So I see it this time. Was it so? If you release one every week or every 2 weeks, then that's was it 12? How many classes are there? There's 12 classes.
12. We should probably know this off the top of our heads, shouldn't we?
I can't. Here's the thing. I've got a low int. I feel like 10.
There's 12. And then there's the artificer and the blood hunter as well.
Fair. Okay. Wow. Jeez.
I'll have to see if I decide to do a one-man band artificer or not.
That's perfect. Literally all the little instruments and everything. Well. So I think, unfortunately, looking at the time, we are coming to pretty much the end. I think we've run over a little bit, but that's fine. This is my podcast. We can run long if we want. But Kai, if people are interested, if they want to hear about this buff, I guess buff barbarian, because buffing himself, buffing other characters, and being a barbarian, how can people sort of hear about your work?
Mostly through Twitter, so that would be at Paradoliak, Paradoliak. I spelled it right. Good, got it. That'd be the best place to find out. I'll definitely be promoting that when it comes up. Talk about it there.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, and like I said, there'll be links to your DMsGuild catalog and the your Twitter, and it'll be on screen. It'll be around.
I have a link to my DMsGuild catalog on the Twitter there, so if you go look at that, that'll direct you to the right place, and you'll be up all set. I'm on DMsGuild obviously as Kai Linder, so you'll see my name in the notes for this, and you can go hunt it down that way.
Perfect. And then as well, I've been Matthew Whitby. You can find me at Whitby Writes. Have I got anything in the works coming out soon? I don't think so, but maybe I do. Again, everything's a blur. I'm Matt
Whitby, and I have no idea what I'm doing.
I'm a professional. Very last question, then, Kai. How do you suggest we end this podcast?
I mean, you've done a pretty good job of wrapping it up there with all the usual stuff. I don't think I have anything as cool as punching the webcam or anything like that.
I think you kind of mentioned it. I think going with the sort of existential crisis of I have no idea what I'm doing. I have lost all semblance of what is going on. And maybe if you turn out next week, I'll have it together. That's that's going to be the cliffhanger. Does Matthew get his act together in time for next week?
Things end without any satisfaction. That's just how it happens. Maybe there'll be more.
I'm going to stop doing this podcast at a really unsatisfactory number. It's going to get to episode 93, and that's all you get.
Perfect.
So thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thanks.